Hi there, I'm Liesl Smith and I'm so glad you can join me today for this video. I'll be sharing with you how depth of field works and also your A or AV mode on your camera and how you'll be able to use that. So enjoy. Depth of field can be explained as how much of your image is in focus in front of or behind your point of focus. The F number on your camera controls the depth of field of your photo. Now this would be if you switch your camera on and you'll see it says f2.8 or f5 or f8. That's what I'm talking about. A small f number like f2.8 will give you a very small depth of field. That would mean only a little bit of your image is in focus. Where a large f number will give you a large depth of field, where a lot more of your image will be in focus. Let me give you an example. As you can see in this photo, it was taken at f2.8 and only the marble is in focus. This is a very small depth of field. Now if you look at this next image, I've taken it at f8 and now you can start seeing a lot more of the photo starting to come into focus. Not a lot yet, but at least the marble next to the one where I focused on is starting to come into focus a lot more. Now if you go all the way to f32, now you can really see I've still focused on the same spot, but a lot more of the image is now actually in focus because you've got a very large depth of field in this image. One important thing to remember when you're taking landscape photos, for example, or any photo where you need a large depth of field, is where on the image you actually focus. Because an important point is that a third of your image will be in focus in front of your focal point and 2/3 behind your focal point will be in focus. That means in an image like this one, focusing on the back building would not really help because the front will still be out of focus. In this image, you'll probably have to focus about 2/3 into the image, so the front and behind your focal point would all be in focus. Well, you're probably now saying, that's all great and I can see what you mean, but how do you actually use it? Well, that's where your aperture priority on your camera comes in. Let me show you how. Now when we're looking at aperture mode on your camera, that's normally where it says either A or AV on your camera dial. So turn your camera dial to that setting and then you can see with your selector you'll be able to change your f-stop on the camera. This setting is probably the most used setting that you're ever going to use in your photography, as you'll use this for any image where the depth of field is important in your photo. For example, macro, landscape photography, portraiture. Even if you take group photos, most of them you'll use your aperture mode on your camera. What's nice about this mode is that the only thing you need to do is set your F number. So whether you want a small depth of field and use a low F number or a large depth of field, that's the only thing you need to change. The camera will take care of the rest. So for your exposure, it will set the shutter speed for you. But at the same time, it will also still give you the ability to change your ISO if you've got low lighting conditions and you need a little bit of extra light for your situation. You can still go set things like your ISO, your focus point, your metering mode, and all that you can set manually, which makes aperture mode a very versatile setting on your camera. An important tip when taking photos using a large depth of field is to always use a tripod. The reason for this is because you need to use a very large f number, the aperture opening is very, very small. And that would mean that your shutter speed needs to go down quite a bit, have a very slow shutter speed to be able to get the right exposure. And sometimes hand holding your camera would not be enough to give you a steady shot. That's why a tripod is always a good idea. Okay, now let me show you some examples where depth of field has been used very nicely in some photos. So if we look at this weaver, you can see his head and the little branch that he's carrying is in focus, and everything else is starting to blur quite a bit. If you look at his body and even the background, you can almost not even see the thorns in the back. That's totally blurred. This would mean that the photographer for this image used a small f number to give him a small depth of field, so that only a little bit of the bird is in focus. Now the same with this image. You can also see he used a small depth of field so that only the cup and a little bit of the front is in focus. The background is totally blurred, which for this image is exactly what you need, because that's what you focus on, just that one cup. Now in this photo you can see it's a nice landscape photo, and here the whole image is in focus, right back to the trees that you can just make out in the background there. This means it's a large f number to have a large depth of field that he used for this image. So if you want to know whether to use a small f number or a large f number, it sometimes makes sense if you've only got one thing that you want to focus on, for example a person's face, or otherwise in this case just the cup, then it's always best to use a small f number so that you can focus only on your subject and everything else gets blurred out. But in a case like this, you want the whole image to be in focus, so you'll use a large f number for this one. Same for this photo. As with the previous one, you can see the whole image is in focus, so this photographer also used a large f number to get everything nicely in focus for this landscape picture. I hope you understand depth of field a little bit better now. Most importantly, keep practicing. Go take some photos with your aperture mode on your camera and post it on the Photoshop community, where we can all look at your amazing photos and maybe give some tips if you need to. And then also, if you can please leave me a comment, it would be great to hear from you and see what you think. And thanks again for watching.